Due to the graphic nature of this program, viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for tuning in to today's broadcast. It is the Friday, June 26, 2026 episode of the Marco Jure Show, the only show where the facts are facts and hard truths thrive. I've got a big show lineup for you today, and I don't want to waste any time, so let's hit the ground running with the good, the bad, and the ugly of our weekly economic report to start things off today. And I think the best place for us to begin is looking at inflation. This report just came out yesterday through the Commerce Department, and what they found was that excluding food and energy, the Personal Consumption Expenditures Price Index showed a 3.4% annual rate after rising 0.3% for the month. So now you're paying 0.3% more on your core inflation. This is the cost of your items and what you buy, again, excluding things like food and energy. I love how they conveniently take those two things out when those tend to be the things that go up the most. Now, for all items readings for the PCE index showing inflation running at a seasonally adjusted 4.1% annual rate. So that's when you tie in everything together, you're paying 4.1% annually, this 4.1% more than you were last year. Again, heading in the wrong direction. This is not good. This is the highest reading since April of 2023. Trump has got to make a decision. He's got to decide if he's going to fix our economy, work for the average American, bring the cost of food and fuel down, cost of housing and what have you, or is he going to continue on this ridiculous campaign to stay in this conflict in Iran, which again is causing all this? Now, many people will tell you that President Trump has until September to turn things around. That's when people start to pay attention to politics, how the economy is really working. That's when people in America start to pay attention to what they're going to do come November. Now, that might be true. However, there are lots of people that are growing frustrated with this war. They don't like this war. They don't want us to be in this war. They see what's happening with their wallets when they purchase things, and their purchasing power is decreasing, not increasing, which again, President Trump ran on fixing the economy. He's got to make a decision very, very soon. Is he going to stay in this war, or is he going to get us the hell out of there? There's only a couple options he has. He can decide to stay in the war, prolong the war, or he can get the hell out and stop this nonsense. Take the ships home, stop with the naval blockade, stop with the constant going back and forth on Truth Social, work for negotiations, absolutely, but get us the hell out of there. Get all of our resources, get all of our troops, get all of our ships out of the Persian Gulf once and for all, and stop this. Declare it a victory, declare whatever the hell you want it to be, but get us out of there. And then get to the next line of attack. How are you going to fix the economy by September? And by the way, everything I'm looking at indicates things are going to get much, much worse, not much, much better. If you listened to yesterday's program, I talked to you in great detail about how we have to make a decision now with our strategic petroleum reserves. Are we going to even produce diesel, which gets all of our goods to market? Or are we going to make jet fuel that helps our planes move? You can't have both at the same time, or so I've been told. So we have to make a decision very soon. Our heavy crude storage is depleting very, very quickly. I'm told we have a few weeks more of it. Some say 14 days. Some say maybe until mid-July. And then we're going to have real issues. Here's where the problem comes in. While Trump touts that the Strait of Hormuz is open, and you'll see in just a little bit as to why that's really not the case, the heavy crude is not coming into the U.S. at the rate that we need it to. Yes, we have oil tankers coming in from Venezuela. The reason that's a problem is because this is extremely heavy crude oil. I mean, this is as thick as peanut butter, I'm told. It takes lots of refining. It takes a lot to get it out of the ground. It costs more. When you don't have ships coming in from the Persian Gulf or from Russia, where a lot of this heavy crude comes from, and the ships that are leaving the Persian Gulf are going to Asia, not to the U.S., the question begs, where are we going to get this oil from? Because our reserves are dropping down to a record low right now. We just don't have it. We continue at the rate we're using it. In about a month's time, we're not going to have anything. And then where do we go from there? And one more thing I want to say about this before we move on. We have no ships coming in to our ports with this heavy crude oil. So we have nothing to refine in the next, like I said, upcoming weeks. So what do we do then? We make a decision. Do we continue on with getting our goods to the market, or do we just decide not to fly planes? Which one is it going to be? Again, it's going to be very detrimental for this upcoming November. And by the way, I believe Trump understands this, by the way. That's why he signed the Memorandum of Understanding, which was a good thing. Many people are saying he chickened out. He had no choice. The Iranians won the war. Folks, I've told you that from the start. The Iranians were winning this conflict. We lost the war on day one, but we didn't get regime change. So Trump can decide to stay in, to try and leverage over the Iranians, which it's not going to be successful if he tries to do that. He can make these idle threats to them. We'll blow them up, and it'll take a week for us to blow them up. Okay. We heard this before in the past. It hasn't worked. It's not going to work now. Get us out of there. Yes, continue the negotiations, but you've got to get that economy jump-started right now. I mean, right now. 4 months ago, right now. This is serious. And what are the Republicans going to run on? When you have an economy that's performing very, very badly? Again, we're reaching Biden-era inflationary numbers for the year, folks. This is how bad things are getting. I don't mince words. I tell you exactly what it is. Now, is it true Trump could fix things? Yeah, he could start to fix things. But he's going to do it in time to stop this bottlenecking shortage of petroleum that we have? I don't think so. I see no ships coming into the United States that can meet that demand that we have right now. And by the way, the demand stays as is. The supply is going down. So that's going to create an issue. It's going to cost more to make that jet fuel. It's going to cost more, again, to get that diesel fuel out there. Again, if we're relying simply on our strategic petroleum reserves. No one else is telling you this except for myself and a few select other people. But that's the truth of the matter. And so what do we do then? What if we have diesel fuel that's not making it to market? What's going to happen? You're not going to have groceries in the store. You're not going to have clothing at the store. Any appliances, hardware, any type of retail commodity that you want, computers. None of that's going to make it to where it needs to go, folks. And nothing's going to get shipped to your house because none of it's going to go to the warehouses. So that begs the question, then what? Well, then we're in economic turmoil completely. So while you see things improving in the markets during our report today, I want you to keep that in the back of your head. Where are we going to be in about a month from now if this oil does not come in, which it's indicated it's not going to come in? You're going to see the inflationary numbers I read to you just now look wonderful compared to where we will be in just a short amount of time. I think Trump wants to avoid that. That's why, again, he signed the Memorandum of Understanding. But again, he's got to get things coming into the U.S. Nothing is on its way to the United States. There's no helium, no aluminum, no sulfur, no urea. Certainly no oil coming from the Persian Gulf, which we definitely need. We need that heavy crude oil coming to the United States. And as I say that to you, folks, let me move on to just another very important topic. Certainly, this one's a little bit more positive, I would have to say. But again, what does that mean if things are going to be headed towards complete disaster? This comes from Fox Business. It says the United States economy grew at a faster pace than expected in the first quarter, according to the Commerce Department, the revision that they just released from quarter one. GDP showing that the real number of which the economy grew was an annualized rate of 2.1% in the first 3 months, including January, February, March of 2026. Now, the original report came out and said that the real number was 1.6% GDP growth. Again, very far away from our estimated 3%, which was where we would like to see the economy. But 2.1, it's better, but it's not where it needs to be. So again, while it's something more positive, it's not where it needs to be. We need this to get much, much higher. Again, when we're looking at 2025, we're coming in after the U.S. economy grew at a rate of roughly 2.1% throughout the entirety of 2025. In fact, in the second half of the year, we saw 4.4% annualized growth just in the third quarter. Although we had a sluggish fourth quarter of 0.5%, that's terrible. We need to get things moving. We need to get things growing. This is what Kevin Warsh needs to get with President Trump with. Proper monetary policy. Now we're looking at things being contributing factors to the GDP growth. For instance, we're looking at the information and tech sectors, which were the biggest contributors to that GDP. We're looking at things like the federal government, the professional sectors, the scientific and the technical sectors. Also, we had some durable goods manufacturing that helped lead that case for stronger GDP in that third quarter. But we need to get things moving. We saw imports increasing in the first quarter as well. But again, if we're not producing here, if we don't have the fuel to get our ships to move, what's going to happen? You're going to see that GDP number continue to drop. Again, that's not a good thing. Now, the main offsets of the GDP in quarter one were declines in retail trade, wholesale trade, along with finance and insurance numbers. So, again, what have I been telling you, folks? I've been saying to you specifically, the AI build-out has been very crucial to this. Now, again, whether that valuation is, again, overestimated, which I've told you before, I think this is a bubble that will bust in 2026. We have the information processing equipment. We have the computers. Again, if we don't have the helium, though, to produce these computer chips, these semiconductors, what good is it? And again, 44% of the world supply comes out of the Persian Gulf. That's not getting where it needs to go. So that means the price in general is going to go up as is. When you look at the real final sales to private domestic purchasers, which again is the sum of the consumer spending, the gross private fixed investment, that rose 1.7% in the first quarter after the downward revision of 0.7 percentage points from the previous estimate. Again, let's look at where we are, though. Okay, I'm glad things went up by, a half percentage point. Okay, it's nowhere near where it needs to be. We need to start seeing GDP growth, which again means that our economy is expanding. Now, again, I'm happy it's over 2%, but again, we're short of that 3% goal. That's the problem here. And there's no sign that things are going to be improving in the second half of this year. Nothing is indicating that whatsoever. And when you had a sluggish 0.5% in quarter four of 2025, that is extremely, extremely alarming to me. I would have to say. So there's that, folks. So again, a little bit of a positive note, but again, not where it needs to be. Not where it needs to be. And especially when you're seeing inflationary numbers rising as they are, I'm worried that, again, the economy is going to contract, especially if we see interest rates beginning to go up too, which, again, I think in the future, that will probably have to happen. I think Kevin Warsh will have to make the decision. Obviously, we understand that lately he decided to keep things as a halt and not rise or decrease the interest rates in America. And folks, I'm not alone in this. I tell it to you how it is, but again, I'm not alone in this. The University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index in June rebounded from May's record low, again another positive sentiment, but it remains the second lowest going back to the 1970s economy. Again, not in the right direction. This comes from Quartz. Now, it says here that the lower gasoline prices helped push the University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index up higher in June. But again, that's only the idea that gas is going to continue to go down. So people are happy about this. They're seeing the stock numbers starting to trickle down. Yes, they are. But they're only going to continue to go up if what I say is happening actually happens in the next coming weeks. And you can't do anything, folks. You can't do anything. Once those numbers come in and you realize, hey, we don't have anything to refine. We have nothing to put out on the U.S. market. Where are we going to get this heavy crude oil from? What's going to make our trucks go? What's going to make our jet fuels go? There's nothing there to put in them. And then we have a real problem on our hands, especially with our economy, folks. The cost of living concerns obviously persisted. They said here that June's final consumer sentiment index reading was 49.5. That's a climb from May's record-setting low of 44.8. And well short of the 60.7 posted in June, this time last year, of 2025, where we thought things were going to keep becoming better. Of course, that's what we wanted. That's why we elected President Trump. We were starting to beginning to see good GDP growth in the United States. But what happened in June of 2025, folks? We decided to go in and have the 12-day war with Iran and start this whole economic downfall. Again, focusing on these foreign affairs that have nothing to do with the United States, has nothing to do with a nuclear weapon, because, again, the intel tells us that. And now look where we are today. In a war we can't win, that we've spent billions of dollars on, we have billions of dollars of damage, and we got absolutely nothing from it. Now the Iranians have a port of which they will now be charging a toll system on. That will obviously be the case. And they're going to end up making billions of dollars every single year now because of our misstep with this. So yes, we have a little rebound in the month of June, of course. There you go. We also saw gains recording across income, wealth, and political affiliation. The index of consumer expectations climbed to 50.7 from 44.1 in May. So yeah, we have a little bit of a positive sentiment going on. But again, this is temporary. That's my point I'm trying to make to you. This is all temporary nonsense. You feel good in June, but how about in July when we have no oil? How's that going to go? What are you going to do then? Oh yeah, you can drive your car around. Where the hell are you going to drive it to? There's nothing in the grocery store. Unless you're going to a farmer's market and they get it to you somehow that way, which is probably going to be the case. That's why I always tell you to get to know who's producing your food too, by the way. But despite the monthly improvement, sentiment sits 13% below the February 2026 reading, recording just before the start of the Iran war, and nearly 20% below where it was a year ago. This, again, is very troubling. And again, it's very concerning in a midterm cycle. So let's never forget that, where we are going to be. Again, all temporary right now, folks. So I take this with a grain of salt. But everything has got to change with the economy right now. Yes, we're seeing stock market gains. We're seeing things rising up, certainly lifting up some personal finances of some consumers, where some of the concentration is in this polling. But we have about 28% of consumers in the highest cycle here of the stock holdings citing a favorable asset of their values. So they're doing well. Absolutely. We're seeing the stock market hitting record numbers. But again, it's all being inflated from the government. The government is bullish on AI. So therefore, again, you're seeing these stocks improve very well. And you'll see that today illustrated in our tech stocks. But again, where are we going to go from here next month? This is what I'm concerned about. I'm looking at the future. I'm not looking at today. June's almost over with anyway. Where are we going to be on July 26th? When the so-called bottlenecking of the oil is now here. And once that happens, you cannot ignore that. Wall Street can no longer ignore that. So you can look at what Trump is saying about the war, about a peace deal, but where are we when that supply dries up completely? And I worry about that greatly. When we cannot fly planes, when we can't get goods to the market, what do we do then? It's all a very, very big problem, folks. And not too far away from big problems, this comes from Bloomberg. It looks like Mamdani got his wish. Yeah, good old Zoran Mamdani. He had a nice little week where his 3 candidates won their congressional primaries, of course. He's very happy about that. He looks like the new leader of the Democratic Party, so-called. But here we go. We have the New York City Rent Guidelines Board voting to freeze rents for roughly 1 million stabilized apartments, handing Zoran Mamdani a major political victory, despite being so obsolete and hollow on a lot of his other promises that launched him to City Hall. But the board voted 7-1 in order to pass the freeze, which applies to both 1- and 2-year leases. And this is the first time that longer-term rental agreements have been frozen for. Now, the freeze was approved in spite of pushback from landlords who say they are being squeezed by spiraling costs right now. Absolutely. And hours after a member of the panel quit in protest, saying that the process had become too politicized. Now, there are times where maybe freezing the rent is something important. So, for instance, if you had the COVID lockdown, for instance. Maybe that is a good reason to freeze for a short period of time. But Mamdani's repeatedly called for the freeze, arguing that the stabilized tenants are facing rising costs for food, transportation, other necessities, even as wages fail to keep up with the pace. Again, that has to do with the inflationary numbers. But the vote follows months of debate over whether tenants should be shielded from soaring housing costs despite mounting financial pressures on landlords. So let me ask you this. What do landlords do for their upkeep of these apartments in which they own, in which they let people live? And then you have the city coming in and saying, well, you know what, you can no longer charge a higher fee for the people that live in these apartments. Now, that sounds nice, doesn't it? But what about the upkeep of these apartments? How are they going to make a profit on these locations of which they're renting out, of which they have to pay the massive property tax on these big buildings? What do they do then? What happens next? We've seen this happen. By the way, the areas of the country that have these rent control laws, these rent freezes, the highest cost of living in the country is number one, San Fran Schmucko, and number two, New York City. And they have the most draconian and most regulated rent freeze or rent control, whatever you want to call it. They're the ones that own this. So when we say, okay, we're not going to raise your rent now for a while, or we're going to prevent your landlords from doing so, you're still paying more than anyone else in the entire country, folks. Again, that has to do with the density of which people live, of course, New York City, right? Stacking people on top of each other. But it doesn't work in the end. It doesn't lead to a better or more prosperous outcome for these people. Again, while it sounds nice, hey, we're not going to raise your rent, you have to ask yourself the question, though. Are they going to be upkeeping these apartments? No, they're not. Things are going to get much, much worse. And by the way, when you have the idea that your landlord is going to come in and fix everything for you, what is he going to do then? Again, when you're not turning a profit, when you have to pay more for taxes or property tax especially, what do you do then? When you say, hey, my light bulb's out, I need you to come fix it because I'm not going to do it. Or, hey, I've got a crack in my wall, I need you to come in and fix this ASAP. I mean, do they think there's going to be an upkeep on the residency of which they live? No, things are going to get much, much worse. This is what they can't understand because, again, they've never run anything, these people that sit on these boards. Certainly Mamdani has never run a damn thing in his life, which is why this whole mayoral race is such a complete farce. But nonetheless, this is a little Pyrrhic victory for him, I suppose. Calling this relief for the working people across the city, of which they deserve. Yeah. What about the people that own these buildings? What are they going to do then? What if they can't keep up on the taxation, of which the city loves to do? Then what? Things are going to be problematic, especially. And again, like I said before, the dilapidation, the dwindling of the quality of these apartments continues to go down. Now, people don't want to rent in these areas. It's a very big mess, folks. Absolutely. But again, for Mamdani, this is a little bit of a win for him, so we'll let him have it. Again, I don't know what win you could possibly have when you're paying. Look at this. It says Manhattan leases were signed at a median of $4,695 in July, the third highest on record. Yeah, see, there you go. So the costs always go up, and then they say, okay, we're going to cap it for a while. But once they lift that rent freeze, those prices are going to go up significantly. That's what these people can't understand. So there you go, folks. There's Mamdani as the mayor of New York City, the Big Orange, as I call it now. There you go. And meanwhile, let's take our focus over to what's taking place in the Middle East, because, again, that's causing much of the economic turmoil we find ourselves in today. And this comes from the International Business Times, saying that, well, we've got issues going on in the Persian Gulf now. Right? Trump says we got a peace deal going on. Everything's honky-dory. Where are we now, though? Iran now has claimed, well, this is the alleged claim that Iran has now struck a cargo vessel in the Strait of Hormuz, putting the oil trade on edge. Here's the problem, though. I looked this up. It says 2 U.S. officials told Reuters that Iran were responsible for the attack, speaking on the condition of anonymity because of the sensitivity on the matter. Yeah, great. Now, the Iranians earlier had warned that commercial vessels against using the newly established maritime corridor through the Strait of Hormuz that had been coordinated by Oman and the United Nations to facilitate safer commercial transit through the region. So what they said was, you need to coordinate with us in order to get through the region. Now, they didn't say if you go through the region, you're going to be attacked. That wasn't made clear. However, I looked this up, and the ship that was hit is called the Ever Lovely. This is a Singapore flag container vessel operated by a Taiwanese Evergreen Marine. That's the name of the company. The vessel was not sunk, although it did receive some damage to the bridge windows, the starboard side of the ship, but it still remains seaworthy, and then later did depart the Strait of Hormuz. No deaths or injuries or casualties were reported, certainly not in these initial reports. But again, it begs the question, if there is peace, or if the strait is open, as President Trump says, why would the Iranians go in and attack this ship, especially a Singapore ship? Doesn't really make any bit of any sense. Now, the Iranians have not come out and said that they did attack the ship. Usually they will come out and say they've done this. So we don't even know if the Iranians actually attacked the ship, but we do know that the ship was struck with some sort of projectile just yesterday. Again, they're telling us, though, that the Iranians did it. Now, again, is this to stymie the negotiation process? Again, only time will tell. But I do want to play you President Trump right now. This is him speaking about, I guess, the progress of these negotiations and where we go from here. Let's take a quick listen to what he said just earlier this week when he was in, I believe he was in Pennsylvania at a rally. Take a listen.
As you know, we just achieved a historic peace agreement with Iran to end the conflict in the Strait of Hormuz. And by the way, yesterday, 19 million barrels of oil flowed out of the Strait of Hormuz, a very beautiful place. That's the most oil in the history of the Strait. No, it's never been any, you've never seen anything like that. It's called an oil gusher, and most importantly, we are ensuring one thing very importantly, because this is why I did it. I did it for this reason, 99% for this. Iran will never have a nuclear weapon, and they've agreed to that.
I find that fascinating. I really do, for a couple different reasons. Number one, the nuclear weapon was never the case. It was always about regime change. I've said that to you time and time again. We've got this coming from people like Marco Rubio, Peter Doocy, all confirming that it was Netanyahu going in that made us attack the Iranian government. That's why it all took place. It had nothing to do with the nuclear weapon or the nuclear dust. That was all something that came later on as to justify the attacks. Now, right after this took place, when he says, for instance, we've never seen so much oil leaving the Persian Gulf. It's the most oil ever produced at any given time in history. That's not true at all. That's not true at all. For a couple different reasons. Number one, the ships that were leaving, first and foremost, now were not the most of the massive tankers that generally leave the region. So I don't know where he's getting his numbers from. That 19 million barrels left, which again would be a great thing. The problem is all those ships, which you can track on marinetraffic.com. Anyone can go to that right now, too, by the way, if you don't believe me. And you can just look at the traffic and which vessel's going where. They're all on the GPS system. They all have their transponders on, for instance. Even though they turn them off, the Iranians can figure out who they are, too, by the way. But all that oil is going to Asia. It's not going to Europe or to the United States. It's not like we have 19 million barrels coming to the United States right now. And even if it did, it would still take roughly about 2 months to get here. That's another part of the problem. That's what most people don't understand. You might have a ship leaving today, but it's still not going to be where it is going until maybe the end of August, early September. That's a problem. So, when he's talking about the oil gushers, for instance, again, I see no proof of that. We do know that oil tankers have been leaving. Most of them are Iranian vessels that are leaving, and they're not coming to the United States. So there's that problem. Most of the ships that have been there since February 28th are still there. They're not moving. They're not going anywhere. Most of the oil refineries are still offline in the region. Again, another major problem. I told you before, folks, this is not the flick of a switch. This is going to take a long time to get things up and running. Like I said, this should have taken place, the stopping of this should have taken place the day that this took place. On February 20th, Trump should have said, listen, we got to come together. We've got to stop this. My bad. That should be the situation. But again, the Iranians are going to control what goes in and out still. Again, I see no sign of complete free movement or traffic transiting the straits. I certainly don't see that right now. And a lot of it, though, has to do with the insurers that own these ships. That's the problem. The insurers are telling the ships that, hey, listen, you're not going anywhere. Lloyd's London's telling them not to move forward, and rightfully so, because we don't know where these sea mines are. We don't know where they are. We don't know if the Iranians are going to hold their word, right? We don't know. We just don't know. So until there is an active call that from the Iranians, yes, everything can transit freely, the Strait of Hormuz has been demined, then I think those ships are going to be staying there. And by the way, there needs to be maintenance to these ships. They've been sitting there for months on end. So this is far from over, folks. Again, despite President Trump's rhetoric, which Wall Street has been chewing up and eating and spitting out this entire time. Again, the realization has not yet set in about this supply chain issues that I've been telling you about for quite some time. That's coming up in the next couple of weeks. So again, we'll see if I'm right or not. Again, I pray to God for once that I'm wrong, but I don't see that happening, folks. I really don't see that happening. Unless there's some ships that are on their way to the U.S., so they're a week away with massive quantities of heavy crude oil, I don't see how we get away from this. I don't see how we get around this. It's just simply not going to happen. Now, the financial markets reacted almost immediately once this attack took place. After earlier declines in the fuel costs, we started to see the price dropping, and then we started reports of going back up yesterday just for a little bit of time. We'll get to the oil futures in just a little bit, but I do want to say to you, despite the growing risks, some shipping companies continue to move their vessels through the Strait under the heightened security measures. For instance, we know that a Danish ship has made their way through on Thursday. 2 of its ships had successfully exited through the Gulf, through the Strait of Hormuz. So it is possible. But again, this is not the same traffic of which we had at one point. We are down 90% of the normal traffic, 90% of what should have come in and out of that strait since March 1st, has not gone through, folks. And that's the biggest problem with all this. The traffic is not anywhere where it needs to be. And many of those ships are still stuck in that region. They're still not moving. And the biggest problem is that none of those ships with oil, with the urea, with the sulfur, are coming to the United States, and we desperately need it. All right, folks, let's jump right into our stock market report to close things off with our weekly economic report. Let's take a look at the Dow Jones. Let's see where we stand today. And it looks like the Dow Jones is trading today at $51,848.11 per share, down some 0.14% today. We've got the S&P 500 trading at $350.96, down some 0.09%, so barely moving right there. And the NASDAQ also in the red, trading at $25,306.83 a share, down 0.20%, ladies and gentlemen. And, a lot of this has to do with the Fed rate expectations, a lot of the geopolitical developments, especially with the U.S. and Iran deal. That's heavily weighing on the top marginal stocks. And again, the corporate earnings and the tech and industry sectors are driving where we are today with the top marginal stocks. So we have some, I guess you call it some cautious optimism right now. Again, especially with the tech and industrial sectors providing supports. We have consumer-focused and rate-sensitive sectors facing some headwinds. That's why you're seeing a little bit of volatility right now. But overall, the monetary policy signals and the geopolitical developments are the reasons for where the stocks are today. Let's move on to the tech stocks right now. We got Bitcoin trading at $59,891.51 a share, up some 1.08% today. We're looking at NVIDIA. NVIDIA is trading at $194.33 a share, down some 0.72%. So down barely almost a percentage point today. We're looking at Alphabet too, trading at $342.44, down 0.37% today. Then let's move over to Apple, trading at $281.61 a share, up 2.35% in the green, looking very, very good. And then let's shift over to Amazon, trading at $228.47 today, up 0.64%. Micron is down some 5.2% today. Still very, very much in the positive, though, trading at $1,150.42. And the reason I say that to you, I'm looking at the year over year. Year over year, Micron is done so well. It's up 812% from where it was this time a year ago. So, again, when we look at kind of the intermediates, the weekly numbers, it's not always indicative of where it was just a year ago, folks. So I want to highlight to you that Micron has done very, very well. Dell Technologies down 5.22% today, trading at $388.07 a share right now. Again, up 208% from this time last year. Let's take a look at Microsoft today. Trading at $371.13 a share, up 5.19% today. Looking at Meta, good old Mark Zuckerberg, trading at $550.13 a share, up 1.34%. And then we have Broadcom today, trading at $367.73 a share, down almost 3% at 2.95% today. And then we got Elon Musk, Tesla. How's Tesla doing? Trading at $380.30, up 1.38%. Yep, there we go. And finally, then we have Advanced Micro Devices, trading at $521.37 a share, down 2.1% today. So what we're seeing, we're seeing a lot of the AI rally still being very strong. Again, like I told you before, folks, the government is bullish on AI. And when the government is bullish on something, it tends to do very well. That's just the truth of the matter. Now, we have some analysts calling for more evaluation discipline, noting the risk from earlier regulation, export controls, and macroeconomic headwinds. However, the stocks themselves are doing fairly well. We've seen some in the red today, but we've also seen some doing very well in the green. And again, the bottom line is the tech stocks are trading higher today, especially NVIDIA and Tesla, if you will, really leading a lot of those gains. You have Microsoft, Apple, Alphabet holding steady, but the AI-driven growth story remains intact. They're still doing very well. You're seeing investor focus shifting just a little bit towards sustainable profitability and the diversification beyond all the AI hype, of course. But this is where we are today. The tech stocks are again, doing very well. So there's that. Micron, again, doing extremely well. Also, as kind of the new tech margin kingpin right now, as memory crisis pushes through the company's past NVIDIA's and Meta's right now. So again, lots of things changing, lots of things growing in the tech sectors, but they're doing very well right now. But again, I told you before, get ready for that AI bust that will take place in 2026. Right now, it's still looking to be in the green. Let's shift our focus now over to the precious metals market. Where do we stand today? Let's take a look at gold, trading at $4,080.60 an ounce, up some 0.82% today. We have silver trading at $58.87, up 0.087%. We have, let me see, palladium trading at $1,215.50. And for some reason, I don't have my platinum reading with me right now. So I don't have that for you, unfortunately. But here we go. We've got gold remaining near a multi-year highs still, despite it being down significantly. I mean, at one point we were at what? $5,400 an ounce. Now it seems to have contracted slightly. But we still are supported by the strong demand from central banks right now with the gold. And again, I believe the gold is going to start to go up very, very soon. We have continued investor interest despite the hawkish Federal Reserve stance right now. Again, that comes from Kitco. Again, silver the rally behind that is being driven by both the industrial demand, again, silvers and a lot of our military-grade weaponry. We have that demand. We have speculative buying right now. Again, it's a precious metal. So there it's always obviously looked at as a very strong commodity. Platinum and palladium are benefiting from the industrial demand as well, especially in the automotive and the energy sectors, although palladium's recent year-over-year decline reflects a lot of the ongoing supply constraints and the market volatility. Now, where do we stand with our oil? That's the big part. Everyone always asks about how we doing with the oil. And we have the West Texas Intermediate today. My goodness. Again, we're all in the red today. Trading at $69.06, down almost 4%. It's 3.98% today. Brent crude is now trading at $71.69. Yep, down almost 5%, trading at 4.74% today. And then when we look at Burbank crude, that's down 0.36% at $76.03. Again, that's out of the Persian Gulf. Dubai crude, again, also in the red at 0.36%, trading at $74.83 a barrel. Western Canadian Select trading at $57.99 per barrel. Again, down 0.36%. I guess they're all trading in lockstep today. And then we've got Urals crude coming out of Russia, trading at $58.83 per barrel today. It is down significantly from where it was with its $96 high not too long ago when this war started to take way. So, folks, again, we see the key drivers of the decline of oil right now is, again, the sentiments about what's going on in this war with Iran. The restoration of the Strait of Hormuz traffic, again, has got investors very happy. Again, it's got them very bullish that everything's going to be okay. It'll all be rainbows and sunshine very, very soon. But the problem I told you, especially here in the United States, especially in Europe, they're not getting that heavy crude oil, which is very important for the diesel and, of course, for the jet fuel, of which we're very dependent on because we don't produce that here in the United States. So, again, take that as you will. I'm just telling you where we are. We're at very, very low strategic petroleum reserves here in the United States for our heavy crude oil. That's a big, big problem because we haven't been building it up. Joe Biden depleted it during his tenure. Trump has now had to dig into it now. But again, it's why we have it. It's for emergency purposes, and we are in an emergency with our oil. The Saudi and Middle Eastern output ramps seem to be signaling some major regional output increase since where we were in March. We have the temporary Iranian oil waiver. That is the U.S. waiver allowing purchases of the already loaded Iranian crude expected to be available for supply. We've reduced sanctions on the Iranians as well, just to get that oil pricing down. We've also seen a shift from supply shock to supply recovery in some aspects of the OPEC quotas right now. Again, scarcity is surplus, okay. But again, we've got to understand something. That oil is not where it needs to be yet. Now, again, if you're going to India, okay, it's going to be there fairly soon. It's going to Pakistan. It's going to be there fairly soon. It's going to China, about a month. But nothing is coming to the U.S. That's the takeaway from all this. So, yeah, some of the markets are doing better. The prices are going back to where they were. But you're not seeing anything coming to the U.S., and that's going to be the biggest problem of it all. Just thought I'd share that with you. And the U.S. stockpiles, again, still very tight. The domestic inventories at Cushing remain below the operational needs, 19 million barrels per day. Yep. So there we are, folks. There we are. So again, I'm calling it. I'm telling you right now, I'm calling the oil problem. That is something that's going to be coming to fruition in the next month. Probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks, we're going to start to hear about supply chain issues or demands with the issues with the demand. That's something that's just going to be reality soon, folks. And once that happens, there's no going back from it. You're going to see those prices at the pump. That's why they're not seeing them go down yet, because a lot of these oil companies realize there's a problem here. There's a very big problem. So while investors are very happy about what Trump has done, by the way, I'm happy about what he's done, but again, the reality is the oil woes are not gone. They are just getting ready. And I wouldn't doubt it if we saw the oil per barrel double. So if we're at, $75 per barrel, you're going to see it looking at around $150, $160 per barrel. Some people in the onset of this war said it could reach $200 per barrel. I pray to God that's not the case. Again, it'd be very devastating for our economy and for the Republicans in the midterm. So that's why I say, folks, we need to get to work on the economy, not foreign wars for other countries. Let's move on, folks. The economic report always eats up a huge chunk of our time, but I want you to be informed. I want you to be aware of what's going on around you. I do. That's why I share all this with you. All right, let's move on. Bitcoin, not Bitcoin. Where am I? Well, not Bitcoin, but like Bitcoin. We're talking about central bank digital currency. This is a win for us that do not want to see central bank digital currency. We understand how dystopian that would be. And in the 21st Century Road to Housing Act, which cleared earlier this week with the Senate with an 85-5 vote, Republican leaders insisting on the central bank digital currency restriction ride, along with most of the bipartisan bills in the year. What was also placed in this was language in the bill that said that the Board of Governors of the Federal Reserve System or any Federal Reserve Bank may not issue, create, circulate a central bank digital currency up until December 31st, 2030. Now, what happens after that, only time will tell, but for the time being, our central banks cannot do this. So it explicitly shields private stable coins, carving out any open, permissionless, or private dollar denominated assets from happening, at least for the next 4 years. Now, Trump has set the political foundation for the ban in January of 2025 when he signed an executive order barring his administration from any type of CBD activity. CBDC, there we go. Warning that it would threaten the stability of the financial system, the individual privacy, absolutely 100%. He's absolutely right about that, and the sovereignty of the United States and its currency. Now, again, I told you this before. I think the relationship between Kevin Warsh and Donald Trump will be something positive, but he went on to say that the CBDC is a bad policy choice, again, making the Fed and the White House, for once, align yet again. So I hope that relationship sticks, and I hope Kevin Warsh is a warrior for, again, hard currency in the United States. Because, again, if we all go digital, there's no saying that a bank or a financial institution cannot totally just take everything of yours. I mean, what do you do when everything's on a card? What do you do when everything is on a computer screen? You have no say over it. You have no way to hold that money of which is yours. And again, as I told you before, if you get on a line with the government, or if you protest, or if you speak out against certain things, or say something the White House doesn't like, well, hey, what's to stop them from shutting you down? We've seen this happening in the UK. Don't have access to their banking system? Well, hey, what do you do then? Do you go rally some more? Do you protest? All they do is then just shut you right down. Again, when government merges with the banking sector in a sense where they can control every single thing, they can shut you right out. And I don't think anybody wants it to be 1984. Okay, we don't want any Orwellian, dystopian societies, which they are desperately trying to push us into, but I'm glad to see that Trump and Kevin Warsh are on the same page with this. So certainly a very big victory in this bill that Trump still yet needs to sign, though. I think he will very soon. But this is something very, very crucial, folks. We've got to hold on to the ability to hold our own currency and to have our own currency. And I would love it, too, if Trump rescinded some of the earlier legislation, certainly from the FDR era, that people can once again begin to hold actual tangible gold and silver in their own possession. Not just own it, but actually have it in their possession. I think that would be very, very wonderful if you did that. All right, moving on, folks. We talked about some Supreme Court victories yesterday that, again, were very crucial. We had talked about the gun laws in, for instance, Hawaii, for it was concealed carry holders, if you will. Very, very big win there. We saw some big wins with President Trump and the temporary protected status of legal, well, I guess they're Well, they are illegal, I guess. People that have come here for asylum from Haiti, from Syria, and other countries as well. Trump doesn't have to allow them to stay in the country. He can go on with deporting them, should he be able to. So I thought that was a big win for that. There was a case, though, the other day this week that was not a win for America, certainly not for the Make America Healthy Again movement. And there was a 7-2 decision announced on Thursday yesterday that will send a shockwave up your spine, which, again, is a big win for Bayer, a German-owned company that bought up Monsanto a couple years back. And they're the maker of this weed killer called Roundup, which has a component in it, a chemical-derived glyphosate, which causes cancer, is what many lawsuits have alleged them of doing. Now, some people will argue, well, there's no real cases that it causes cancer. You can't just say that. You can't do that. And all this other nonsense. First of all, glyphosate. Glyphosate is sprayed on these GMO seeds of these crops, which are created in a lab. And it's so toxic, they had to create these GMO seeds that would be resistant to the glyphosate itself. So it was only killing the weed, not the plant itself. And you might say to yourself, well, Dres, that's brilliant. I mean, that's great, right? And then I say, well, wait a minute. You're spraying this toxic chemical. By the way, go look at any farmer today that runs in these fields, or the people that work for these farmers. They're wearing hazmat suits and what have you. I don't think that's conducive to a healthy food supply. Again, I'll just tell you how I see it. But there certainly is some cause for concern. Certainly the MAHA movement blames the chemical not only for the rising cancer rates that are in our agricultural workers, but those that eat these foods, of which are sprayed constantly with this glyphosate, which obviously would be a part of the food of which you're eating, even if you rinse it off. But certainly also for gluten intolerance, the metabolical dysfunctions that we're starting to see in this country. So obviously this was a big win for large agricultural corporations, big agra in a sense. Now, the majority held that after the EPA decides that the appropriate warnings for a pesticide label, a manufacturer is legally required then to use that label unless the EPA subsequently approves or requires a new label. So what they're saying here is, we need to know exactly what we're putting in our bodies. If something has got this toxic compound being sprayed on the food supply, on the corn, on the whatever it may be, it doesn't matter. This is a problem because you're consuming that, and you're consuming that glyphosate, which gets in your body and it stays in your body, and it's no good, folks. I'll just tell it to you that way. It's not good for you. That's why I choose, certainly if I'm doing fruits and vegetables, I'm going with the organic option. And I tell you this, if you can do it, if you can afford it. I know people are limited what they can do. But if you have the opportunity, go to a farmer's market, an organic, sustainable, regenerative farmer that's producing their own food. And by the way, if you can get Amish food, that's the best you can get. I get my eggs, I get my butter, I get kefir, I get a lot of things from the Amish. They don't do all this. They don't spray it like this. Everything they get is from the earth, and they're not spraying glyphosate on things. They're not feeding their animals corn or soy. Again, wouldn't do that. You want to put things in your body that are done in a natural, organic way, non-GMO. That's the best way to go. Obviously, the glyphosate, these seeds are all GMO. They're genetically modified. These are toxic compounds. Like I said, it kills everything but the seed. That's how the seed was developed. So it's like this Frankensteinish, freakish, food supply that we find ourselves in. But again, I say this to you because, again, glyphosate is the most common weed killer in the agricultural sector in the U.S. today. We have roughly 280 million pounds of this glyphosate, this toxic chemical, that is spread on nearly 300 million acres of American farmland. Again, these numbers come from the EPA themselves. But you have MAHA advocates like RFK Jr. that say glyphosate is responsible both for the rising cancer rates in the agricultural workers in this country. So I tend to believe RFK Jr. And by the way, I've known this before this even came out. This compound is toxic. It doesn't belong in the body. Just like aluminum or mercury don't belong in the body. right? Which we have seen in a lot of these vaccines, certainly in these childhood vaccines, in which they shouldn't be being injected with this. But in the case Monsanto versus Durnell, it revolves around whether the federal insecticide, the fungicides, by the way, disgusting, and Rodenticides Act gives the EPA the sole authority to determine what warning labels can be placed on regulated products, including warnings that a product may contain a cancer-causing chemical like glyphosate. Well, I think they should. I think you should know, again, what you're putting in your body. Now, Bayer, the parent company of Monsanto, they bought them out. That's what it is. By the way, Monsanto was around for about 100 years. This is nothing new. It just become more prevalent because it's cheaper to do. And by the way, they're the makers of glyphosate. They faced billions of dollars in civil litigation claims, saying that it failed to warn consumers that the Roundup, the toxic chemical which is responsible for the glyphosate, may be linked to cancers such as non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. So the so-called failed to warn cases against Bayer started after working class groups of the World Health Organization, the International Agency for the Research on Cancer, classified the chemical as probable carcinogen to humans back in 2015. Even the disgraceful World Health Organization is saying this thing causes cancer. So, folks, my big takeaway to you is, yes, we need to do more with this. And yes, we still need to fight these big companies, that are plaguing us with these toxic chemicals. We don't want to put these chemicals in our body. No good. No good comes from this. We need to eat dense, highly nutritious, nutrient-dense foods. That's what you should be looking for. Like I said, if you can go to the Amish, if you're able to do so, Amish, local farmers that don't spray this glyphosate, that have organic produce on their own farms that they produce themselves, get away from the big agri chain. Or if you're going to the grocery store, at least do what you can to buy organic foods, if you can, folks. And again, why do I say this to you? Because I want you to be healthy. Being healthy is a part of being independent. That you're not dependent on, obviously, going to now the medical system, which we know is a complete and utter failure, right? Kind of works in hand. Big pharma, big medical services, yeah, all the same, right? They feed you the crappy foods, right? You eat it, you get sick, you got to go now, and you have to be in debt to the, big healthcare system. It's a revolving door, folks, a revolving door. You pay the money, they get you sick, you go to the healthcare system, you have to pay them. It's just, how can they take the money out of your pocket? Eat healthy, invest in yourself, exercise, of course, get sunlight, touch grass, please. Get your feet touching the grass every single day. Do some grounding. It's always good for you. Always good for you. Try to spend some time outside every single day if you can, if you're able to. And I feel like I'm going to have to extend the show again today. I want to get through these articles. I always run out of time. I always expound on what I'm telling you, and everything tends to go over. Anyways, I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as I can. We got about 4 more articles we have to go into. Let's see where we are today. I might skip this article from Paul Craig Roberts and go to just these other 3, because this article's a bit long, and it kind of talks about things a little bit different than where we are right now. Although it does talk about the judicial system in this country. So I think I'm going to save this one for Monday. We'll move on to my next line of attack. And this is the reflecting pool, right? The reflecting pool in the United States. This is such a stupid thing that we're dealing with. We actually have groups of people that are out there talking about being in favor of algae growing in the Lincoln Memorial reflecting pool. Now, I didn't go over this week because I continued to, again, go over my time and I ended the show. But there was some vandalism that was done to this reflecting pool. They're not happy that President Trump has gone in and changed the way it looks and cleaned it out and spent millions of dollars on it, even though Biden did it, Obama did it. But apparently when Trump does it, it's a major, major problem. Now, I will say one thing about this blue, the color blue, right? If you create a lining in this pool, right next to the Washington Memorial, and it's blue, and then there's, summer season, that sunlight hits that water, and again, it's going to create algae because, again, it's going to get warmer. It's a humid climate, and water holds more of that heat, right? That's just what that color does. Just like if it was black, it would obviously do it. So it takes a lot of maintenance to upkeep. But now they're upset that Trump is cleaning out the pool again. They don't want algae, and obviously our 250th anniversary is coming up, and now we had a schmuck come in, one of these protesters that vandalized this pool, come in and actually cut the lining in it. I mean, again, I don't understand this. How do we coexist with people that are this stupid in this country? They say it was cut with a sharp knife or a razor. Why would you do that? I mean, again, just common decency. You can like Trump, you can dislike Trump. Why are you vandalizing federal property? What good is that going to do? Just that you're a complete jackass? Oh, you cut a pool lining? I mean, again, it's so stupid. Now, the Park Service's Deputy Director for Operations, Frank Lands, that's a hell of a name for a park supervisor. Lands is his name. That's an interesting one. It's like an ice cream man with the last name Cone. Anyways, has sworn in his statement that the reflecting pool liner the Trump administration ordered to be redone ahead of the 250th anniversary was deliberately cut. In Land's statement, he gives no indication of how park officials concluded that the liner was cut using the knife or some sort of sharp device. But the statement was filed on June 24th with the U.S. District Courts of the District of Columbia and its latest filings in connection with a lawsuit arguing that the Trump administration illegally renovated the iconic Washington fixture. So what's he supposed to do? Let it just rot? Was it wrong when Biden did it? Was it wrong when Obama fixed it? Again, you have to have upkeep to these pools. And again, it's a large surface area, obviously. It's huge. Well, it's not that deep, so again, it's going to hit that light, and the sunlight hits it, it's going to create algae. You've got to keep up with it. But there was this massive algae bloom, and it's going to turn the water green, so obviously he doesn't want that. He wants it to look very nice and be upkept. No, who wouldn't? I mean, that's your job. In the winter months, you've got to upkeep this, okay? It just makes sense. That's where you are. But again, I don't understand these low IQs that want to come in and damage things. Oh, because Trump is doing it. Again, did they do it when Biden did it? Did they do it when Obama did it? Or anybody else? Again, this is something you have to upkeep. Anyone that owns a pool would understand this. They wanted it to be American flag, blue. Again, I understand. It's a reflecting pool. You want it to look blue and clean and clear and what have you. But, it's going to take some upkeep because, again, that blue color, again, will bring in a lot of this algae. But apparently it's become a new site of vandalism for the dunces that live in our country. Oh, and by the way, this comes from Fox News. John Bolton, who I call John Dalton. Oh, yeah, John Dalton. Once a staunch Trump ally, has now pleaded guilty to retaining classified documents. Wow. The former White House National Security Advisor, John Bolton, pleaded guilty on Friday to only one of the 18-count indictment, but will not be sentenced until this fall. Well, what will the 77-year-old do? During a hearing at the Federal District Court in Greenbelt, Maryland, Bolton pleaded guilty to the 12th count, alleging that he had unauthorized, possession of a document related to national defense. Yeah. By the way, what happened to Joe Biden when he did this, when he was senator? Had documents that he wasn't supposed to have? Keeping him at his house. How come was Robert Hur or Richard Hur? I can't remember. I think it was Robert Hur. Figured he was such a nice old man, just a nice old guy. Just didn't know where the hell he was. Huh. He ran our country for 4 years. Now, the count typically has a maximum penalty of 10 years behind bars, although they said he would serve no more than 5 years of the prison sentence, if that was be the imposed sentence for him. Yeah, apparently he shared more than 1,000 pages of information about his day-to-day activities as National Security Advisor. Why the hell would he do this? This is just stupid. I think he wrote a memoir or something. No one's going to read it. Why the hell would he do this? Now, he's already facing a fine of $2.25 million, too, I guess, of which he should be paid within the next 5 days, they're saying. A required debrief with a U.S. Intelligence Committee, 3 years of supervised release, up to 100 hours of community service. Good. We need some work on the community pool, or the reflecting pool, right? He needs to get to work. Put John Bolton as the skimmer for that pool, why don't you? I think that would be a great idea, by the way. So there's John Bolton going down in disgrace, as he ought be remembered, the war hawk that he always is. It looks like he got his comeuppance. Oh, and finally, folks, I did want to share this with you. I was going to mention this yesterday. I ran out of time again, unfortunately. This comes from the AP. This is a devastating article. which recants about the rare double earthquake that ravaged through Venezuela on Wednesday, killing some 920 people that we know of right now. The number is probably going to be much, much higher. There were thousands of people injured. It's a devastating event that took place. There were these two very powerful 7.2, 7.5 magnitude earthquakes that struck within 39 seconds of one another, if you can believe that. Right on the San Sebastian fault line in Venezuela's northern coast. This is what U.S. Geological Survey has said. Lots of devastation, lots of buildings and housing that was destroyed. Lots of people, obviously, living in lots of terror. And again, it looks like the International Federation for the Red Cross, the Red Crescent Societies, the FRC have all launched this emergency appeal for 50 million Swiss francs to be able to assist the Venezuelans right now. I know the United States has got their hand in this as well. This is the part of these horrible natural disasters, though. When people come together of other countries and they see that the Venezuelan people are struggling, and we come together and we help them as best we can in these times to help renovate and reconstruct and bring people together and find people and do all this. The United States, we are sending some $150 million in aid, moving through the UN to nonprofits to help put on the ground to, again, help deploy urban search and rescue teams with dozens of people, search dogs, search equipment, military airlifts, the logistics and the life-saving support also being sent by the U.S. We have the UE coming in, many countries, again, putting in their hand. The Czech Republic, Spain, Italy, France, Luxembourg, Germany, Portugal, the Netherlands, all sending many responders to help aid Venezuela in their time of need. So again, we pray for the people of Venezuela, of course. Obviously, something so devastating like this can happen at times. And we've seen some other earthquakes in our country as well that are equally devastating too. Just recently, there's been lots of earthquakes going around, especially in that Pacific Rim, folks. So again, we pray for the people of Venezuela. We pray for their recovery, and hopefully their families are well as best can be. That's all the time we have for you on this show today, folks. Thank you for being here as always. Show 240. I couldn't do it without you guys. I appreciate you so much. Make sure you're always staying prepped with food, water, medicine, fuel, money, tools, anything to be self-sufficient in these times of uncertainty. Get ahead of that. Enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great weekend. I will see you back here on Monday. Until then, be good. Stay busy. God bless.